So, welcome to our campfire knit day. And today we have an extra special, more kind of educational day planned where Allison's going to do a tutorial on color work.
And should all be, we should have all worked the first 3 rounds. So this is about where we all should be. We've knit our brim. We've knit the first 3 rows to the last 6 stitches. And I will show you how to join a new color in these last 6 stitches, but I'm going to do that later. So I'm just going to go ahead and knit these like normal. I'm a continental knitter, so I am right-handed and I hold my yarn in my left hand like a crocheter. And okay, now we're at the beginning of the round and we're ready to commence. Oh, you know what? I need my pattern up here. I'm ready to commence with the color work. So I'm going to just go ahead and slip my marker. Now, first of all, if you're just carrying a color, say you're doing stripes and not color work, and you want to bring up a color from below, you're going to take the old color that you were just knitting with and hold it kind of what we would say in the lower position, but just hold that yarn in the direction it would go if you were to keep knitting with it, right? It would keep going this way. And then you're going to bring up the color you want to knit with. You're going to, sorry, got a tail there. Get out of the way. You're confusing everyone. You're going to bring up the color that now you would want to knit with, and you're going to bring it so over, can you see that? Over the tail of the yarn that's in the back. And this will help keep you from getting holes in your knitting as you carry a yarn up. So if this were just a stripe hat, that's what I would do. I would pick up that yarn and then start knitting with it. But we're doing color work, so we're going to be using both colors of yarn. So it doesn't matter that much because we're going to be using it, so there won't be a big gap. Now, I am supposed to knit 1 with A. My red is A, and then 5 with B. And so you can do that a couple of ways. Right now, I'm just going to start in the way I would normally knit, and I'm going to knit 1 with my A color. And the one thing you just want to check anytime you're carrying yarn up like this is only 3 rows, so it's not a big deal. If this were 10 rows of a stripe, it would matter. You just want to make sure this guy doesn't get pulled too tight. So just give yourself a little slack there. So I knit 1 with A, and then I'm going to knit 5 with B. And if you're just getting started and you don't feel comfortable trying with 2 hands yet, you can just drop the one you were using and pick up the other one and knit your 5. Just like that. And I'll show you English style too. So I'm going to knit 5. Is that 5 or is that 4? 5. Yep. And then, so then I would drop my white and pick up my red and knit 1. And then drop my red and pick up my white and knit. Oh, I was going to show you English and I forgot. Knit 5. So this is kind of a less complicated way maybe of doing it. So now let me show you English style. English style, I would knit 1. Does that look like 6 to you? Looks like 6 to me. Oops. Just go back there. All right. Gosh, I can't get a hold of it. There we go. Knit 1. And then I would just drop my red and pick up my white and knit 5. So you can do it this way. But it can get really tedious always dropping one and picking up the other. And if you're not diligent about where you're dropping, oops, sorry, where I'm going to zoom out a little. I think this way is out. There we go. If you're not diligent about where you're dropping things, uh, you can get tangles back here. You probably didn't notice, but I was very careful to not twist my yarns as I was picking them up and dropping them. So that will work. And we know people who still knit that way, that they just prefer it. They find it the least stressful and most intuitive. And that's great. But all of us are different, and so you should explore what works for you. Now, let's see. Okay, so now we're going to do two-handed colorwork knitting, which is what I think most people do when they strand. That's a sweeping assumption, but I'm pretty sure it's reasonable. So when you are knitting colorwork with two hands, you're going to hold the background color. If you're right-handed, so right-handed knitters, I'm talking to you right now, you're going to hold the background color in your right hand and the motif color, contrast color, the color you want to pop, you're going to hold in your left hand. And what that does is it keeps the left-handed yarn in a lower position when you look at the back of the work, which is what I was doing when I was knitting one-handed. Let's see if you can see that. But see these two strands? The red one is lower because we're looking at it upside down right now, which is probably confusing. Let's look at it this way. The red that I am going to hold in my left hand is lower than the white. And what that does is it makes this red stitch just a little bit bigger because the yarn has to travel a little bit farther. So it makes the stitch a little looser, and that makes it slightly bigger on the front, which means it's more likely to pop. Now, it's not universally true. Sometimes it matters how you tension. I don't put as much tension on my right-handed yarn as I do my left. So sometimes I have the opposite, but whatever. You're going to experiment and see what works for you. The general wisdom is hold the one you want to pop in the lower position. For right-handed knitters, that will be in your left hand. And for left-handed knitters who mirror knit, that will be in your right hand. So now we're going to keep going. We're going to knit one with A. So in that case, oh, and I should ask, if you're new to knitting, if you knit English, you can hold both of these English style. You can hold both of them continental. I'm holding my left hand continental style and my right hand English style because I don't know. Some people hold both yarns in the same hand. We can show that too, but that's a little more complicated. So we're going to knit one with A. So I'm going to do that continental style, just like that. And then we're going to knit 5 with B, the white. Now, you will see as we are doing this, 2, 4, 5, that because I am holding them like this, my red one is just staying lower than my white one. So knit one with A, and then you're going to knit 5 with B. And so you're going to do that all the way around. And you will notice I have this habit. I don't know if you've noticed already, but I have this habit of stretching out my stitches on my needle as I go. And that is a learned behavior that will help improve your tension. It's one of the things I actually really like to recommend to people that if you just like, it's pretty much every time you change color, you just spread those stitches out a little. It's gonna keep you from pulling your contrast color too tight, right? Because if you look at this, let's turn it the right way here. I've got these long floats here that are 5 stitches wide, and it's really easy to pull these too tight when you're knitting. So if you just spread those stitches out on your needle while you're knitting, it's going to help make sure that that float is an appropriate length for the 5 stitches in between. Otherwise, you're going to end up with really puckery, if this is too short. These stitches are going to end up really small, and these are going to get kind of puffed out. And yes, and we'll come on to that more in a little bit. So I just wanted to point out that I'm doing it already without even meaning to. There are more things we can do to improve our tension, but for now, I'll just point out how I'm doing that because it is so second nature to me. I can't not do it. And it's easy to overcompensate too. I used to have the loosest gauge when I was knitting Colorwork because I was so worried about knitting too tight that I really overcompensated. Now, you'll also notice the other thing I'm doing is I am keeping my white yarn next to my right hand and my red yarn next to my left hand so that my yarns aren't getting tangled. I think there's kind of a tendency to want to put everything to the side that you're knitting. When you knit, like I almost always tension with my left hand. So my tendency is to always put all the yarn on the left side. But by keeping it near the hand you're knitting with, you're going to prevent tangles in the back and twisty yarns. It's not going to hurt anything too much if you get your yarns twisted. Depending on how you twist them, it can show through on the front. So anyway, all right. So we're working on our first round. Questions? Andrea, anything I need to elaborate on?
Sorry, I got distracted helping someone for a second, but Nantia had asked if we recommended adult small medium for most women. Did you answer that?
No, I did not answer it.
I will answer that. Probably. But hair can have a lot to do with it. Mm-hmm. So I think typically the head size would be a small medium for women, but if you have really big hair, you probably want to go up to a large. Yep. Would you say the same?
I would say the same. Now, if you're new to Colorwork, and I should have said this in my email because it's a little late to be telling you now, I was going to point out that people worry a lot about their knitting being good enough or looking good enough or sometimes even being perfect. Like they're worried about having mistakes or having the tension too tight. One of the things I love about this pattern is that there's a baby size. And I have found that babies are very forgiving. If your knitting is too tight, they really don't care. They will throw perfect knitting on the floor just like they will, knitting that's full of mistakes. And baby hats go a lot quicker. So if you're just learning, make some babies some hats and you'll get a lot better. Those babies will never know the difference. And I really recommend knitting for babies when you're learning. All right. So any other questions? I'm just going to keep doing this. Now, I'm trying to think of what else I was going to. What's that?
I sneezed.
Oh, don't sneeze. We are going to come on to a few other things. Locking your floats. So sometimes the 5 or 6 stitches is typically the rule of thumb most people use is you don't want a float of more than like an inch-ish I let that go a little further, especially if it's not a glove or something you're going to get a finger stuck in. Um, I typically say 5 or 6 stitches, you're fine to not lock your floats as long as you're diligent about making sure those floats aren't pulled too tight. Again, by spreading out your stitches on your needle like this, that helps a lot. Um, but locking your floats can also help you improve your tension. Um, in fact, in old vintage patterns, they would have some of them, not all of them, would have you lock your float every stitch. So every time you're not working with a color, they would have you lock your float. And I will, let's see, what's the next? This is actually a good row to show you locked floats on, although I'm locking the opposite way that we normally will. But that's okay. So in this pattern, let's just look at this real quick. Ooh, there we go. Okay, so here's the pattern. We're doing this knit 1 in red, 5 in white, 1 in red, 5 in white. So we could lock that red float behind this white stitch. I'm going to show you how to do that. Where we're actually going to need to lock our floats is when we get up here to rounds like 7, 8, and 9, because we're going to have a long stretch of red with no white. So I think it ends up being like 9 stitches here. And so we're going to want to lock our white float in there in the red. But I'll also show you how to, because sometimes you need to lock the other way. So and I think locking this way is actually easier and more common. So let's say, pretend, if you will, that we have a long stretch of 7-ish stitches and we need to lock our float. So what that's going to do is shorten up. It's going to help us make sure that we're not pulling the yarn too tight and that it stays close to the knitting. So if I need to lock my red float behind my white, what I'm going to do is, so essentially I'm going to look at the back here. I'm going to flip it this way because I can't hold the yarn and do it this. So I want to bring the red, which right now is lower than the white. I want to bring it up over the white so that the white will go across it like that. So I'm kind of twisting them in back. So let me show you what that looks like this way. The way I do it, since I'm knitting continental with my left hand, I just bring that yarn forward like this. Then I knit. Oh, also, before I do it, I don't know why, it's just easier for me to stick the needle in the stitch. You don't have to do that first, but it just kind of helps hold everything together. So bring the red, color A, forward so that color B will go over it. So now if I knit that stitch, we see that I have trapped the yarn right there. And then it's always a 2-step process. So then I want to bring the red back to the lower position again. And so I've locked it when I bring it forward. And then it's kind of like locking, unlocking. Now you'll see when I bring it back, I'm going to cross it again. So it's a 2-step process like that will keep your yarns from getting tangled. Now let me knit one more, the 5th stitch, and one more red. How about that? And now let's look at what we did. I'm going to turn it this way. So I'm going to zoom a little for you. So you can see here, where's a pointer? Here is where I brought the red forward. So it was in the upper position. I locked it with the white. And then it gets kind of a little collar on this stitch. And then I bring it back to the lower position and it gets locked again on the way back. And so what that does, you can compare it with this, it just kind of helps keep everything secure. So, and you can kind of tell this, well, there's no tension on this stitch right now, but it's a lot, I guess not a lot, but a little less likely that you'll pull this too tight when you're locking it. Now, the drawback of locking a stitch like this is that that locked stitch can, so it's twofold. This can show through on the front, and especially, we'll probably really see it because we got the white and red. It's such a high contrast, and the dark color is the one that's locked. The other thing it's going to do is make this stitch longer. So, and I'll show you some examples of how it looks in the real world. So, yeah, actually here, you can kind of see the little, it's like a little collar or shawl or something around its shoulders. And I'm pushing on this so you can see it more. But there's the little locked float. And so sometimes that can show through on the front. So some people don't ever lock their floats. But that takes a lot of practice. You have to get really good at the tensioning. So, you know, you can also lock your float every stitch like the old vintage patterns. And then every stitch will have a little collar like that and it won't be noticeable. So let's do that again. I'll do it one more time. I'm going to knit 2. And on the 3rd stitch, I'm going to lock. And I'm picking the 3rd stitch here because it's in the middle of the float. If I had 2 rows that were identical like this, I wouldn't want to lock right above where I locked on the row below, because then you're going to have 2 stitches in a row that are 2 stitches stacked that are a little taller, and it's going to be even more noticeable, and those floats will kind of make themselves known. So you just would stagger. You would lock 1 stitch before or 1 stitch after. So here we go. I'm going to lock the red again. I'm putting my needle into the stitch. I am now going to bring that red forward. I typically bring it right over the needles like that, but you don't have to. Anywhere, as long as it is in front, as long as that yarn comes before the working needle, because otherwise it won't get crossed. If you bring it over here, you're not going to catch it in the stitch, right? Oh, can't show you that for some reason. Come on, right? So there I'm not catching it. So you got to make sure you bring that red yarn either over the working needle itself or in between the needles, but just so that it will get crossed when you loop around the working needle like that. And then you return the red yarn to its resting position and knit the next stitch, and you've done the 2-step process of locking and unlocking.
And this way is a little bit trickier than what you'll be doing really in the hat.
Oh, you think? I think it's easier than what's really in the hat. Okay, so in there, here we go. You can see them all now. But you can see you get a little extra length because it's wiggling around back here. So it just helps keep this tension from getting too tight when you're knitting. And also, if you're knitting a glove or something that your fingers will go in, it's really easy for a finger to get caught in a long float like this. So you would want to lock your floats more in something that your fingers go in. All right, questions? We're flying. Nobody has any questions. Oh, and now I'm all zoomed in. So let me knit a little zoomed in. I'll try and stay in frame. So now I am to the end of the row, and hopefully you guys are getting close. And I'm just going to knit as written. How's everybody doing? And I hate to single anyone out, but I am just going to brag on Karen, who is doing color work and has only been knitting for a few months, which is pretty phenomenal. How are you doing, Karen?
I got where you are.
No way. You're amazing. Karen wins the prize. Sorry, everyone. Karen wins the prize.
That really is awesome, Karen.
It is awesome. I love the boldness of spirit, you know. You couldn't see, but I made a fist when I said boldness. All right. So now we would continue. So I think we've got enough time. Do you think yeah, let's do one more row. So I'm going to advance to round. Oh, I'm so zoomed in. My phone is filthy. I don't like how you can see it while the contrast is changing. So I'm going to swipe this and advance to the next row. I want to add one thing. It did come up in testing. Thanks, Jean. But you can, if it's like when you get to things like this and you don't have the heart motif established yet, it can be a little confusing to do your counting while you're knitting. So you can get some extra little stitch markers. Make sure they're different than your beginning of round marker. So here are a couple. Oops, that one's open. I use these little things that turn up everywhere.
How do they magically appear everywhere?
Well, I think they're all over your house because I lose them like crazy. All right. So, for example, in this one, it's kind of long. If you read the text, it's B1, A1, B3, A3, B3, A1, which can be a little confusing. So, what you may want to do is knit your first 12 in the repeat. I'm going to do 3 here. And see that habit I have of spreading the stitches out. And then I'm going to knit 3 with the red. There we go. It may not look great while you're starting, but don't worry about it. See, I got a little gap there, but it's going to close itself up as I keep knitting. I'm going to do 3 more white and then 1 red. So what you can do, if it's hard for you to keep track of all that, is you can take these little guys, these or whatever stitch markers you want, and pop them on every 12 stitches. And then you're giving yourself, oh, no, I'm not leaving. Hang on. Then you're giving yourself a little visual cue that's the same as the repeat shown on the chart. And that can make it, it can help prevent mistakes. So especially I think if you're new to knitting color work, I advise doing this. I do it a lot of the time. I didn't need them for this. I think just because the motif was simple enough that I could kind of keep track of it. But yeah, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to change your knitting at all. And then they're just floating on the needle. You can take them off at any point. All right. So oops, what I do wrong? It's only 11 stitches. I put it on in the wrong place, you guys. Letting me lead people astray. There we go. It goes right here. There's 12 stitches. All right. So I'm going to do the 1, 1, 1 again. 1, 1. Or no, it's only 1, 1. And then it's 3 of these. Okay. And then I think on the next row, I can show you how to lock the other color. I gotta try and hold still so you don't get seasick watching my needles. Should I zoom back out, or is it nice to be able to see this so big and bold? I never know. Sometimes it's nice to orient yourself with a larger field of view. No opinions, that's fine. So then I could put another one right here if I wanted, but this one's all open. I have more around. All I have to do is look at my carpet. They're everywhere. Don't vacuum. Kill the vacuum cleaner sucking those things up. I feel like our vacuum cleaner is always full of them. They're really cheap to buy. That's why I have them everywhere. I don't know. I can buy a big box of them for next to nothing. See, so look, I'm just going to point out, because I do that kind of, it's a habit now to spread out the stitches. So if I don't spread them out, this is kind of how it's looking. And you can see that these are a little bunched. So what's happened here is I've pulled my red in between this stitch and these 3. And so then I just spread these out just to kind of loosen up that tension and make sure everything will lay flat. So that's all I'm trying to do, is give these guys enough space so that they'll they'll kind of spread out on the needle and align with the stitches below them. Okay. And wow, where does the time go? Fortunately, I think I'm almost there. I'm halfway. Because I do want to show you, I want to show you how to lock the white, because that's what you're actually, I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. That's what you're actually going to end up doing.
And I will just say again, if it hasn't been said, that it's always better when you're doing color work to err on the side of being a loose knitter.
Yep.
Than to knit color work too tight. Because like she was just showing you, if you knit it too tight, it's gonna bunch it up.
Yeah, that means it won't be stretchy.
Yeah.
So like, especially for a hat where you have negative ease, you know, you're supposed to have like maybe, I don't know, 2 inches of negative ease for a hat. But if it's color work and you knit it too tight, you're going to end up with a 17-inch hat that doesn't stretch. So, but the good news is a kid could wear it.
That's right.
Kids are appreciative, like I said, especially babies. Babies are the least judgmental.
I like to think of color work especially too as a you know, kind of a mindset or a meditative thing, like to just relax. Relax while you're doing it.
Andrea is really good at relaxing.
No, I'm not.
You don't know, she is the loosest knitter. So, the other thing you can do, you know, I kind of habitually spread these out, but I also have a tendency to just pull on the fabric a little, just kind of in all directions. And that's just going to let things settle in. I mean, see, look at that. Everybody's happy. Nobody's pulled too tight. Now, okay, let's lock. We're going to do another row. So this row, I'm on round 6 now. I'm just going to show it again. And I'm going to lock that middle stitch in round 6, the middle red one. So where I have A5, I'm going to lock the white, only because I don't want to do another round. We'll run out of time. But normally I wouldn't lock on round 6. I would lock on round 7, 8, and 9. And on 8 and 9, I would lock more often. I'd probably lock on the third red stitch, and then the, what is that, 6th red stitch, just to spread them out, because I don't, like I said before, I don't want all my locked stitches to be in a column. It's gonna, I somewhere I have an example of that, but I don't know where it is. I should have found it. It's gonna, it will show, it's much more likely to show if you have them in a column. All right, so now this round we are A1ing B3, A5, B3. Okay, so I'm just going to put the little cap on my, what do you call that? Flower? Cross? I don't know what those are called. All right, so here we go. A1, B3. And now, so now here's my heart, the base of my heart that I'm building up. I'm going to knit 2. That. And now this is the one I'm going to lock. So now where before I brought the red higher, this time I've got the white, which is already higher. So I need to move the white lower. So I'm going to just, and again, I find it easier to just stick my needle in the stitch first so I can let go of that needle and it won't flop around. I'm going to take my white yarn and I'm going to lay it over the red yarn so you can see. Now, oops, sorry, blurry. There we go, autofocus. So I've lain. Oh gosh, where's Dad when I need him? I'm gonna knit that stitch now. And now I have the white in the lower position, so you can see it moved down. and got trapped by the red right there. Right there. Then I'm going to, remember it's a two-step process, so I'm going to move it back to its original resting position. I call that the resting position. Sounds so laid back, doesn't it? It's just resting there. Now, let me knit. I'm going to knit a couple here because I think I need 3 to finish the. All right, so there's my little heart. Again, looking at the front, you can see it a little bit. Now we're really zoomed in. It probably won't show that much on the real hat, and Andrea has my hat, so I can't show you. But now if we look at the back, and where'd my little pointer go? I lost it again. Here it is. Hey, come here. All right. So here is where I brought the white lower, and then I returned it to its resting position. So you can see the red crossed over it here. There's my stitch, and then the red crossed over it when it went back. So it's like locking and unlocking, or just, you know, there and back again to be a hobbit. Okay. So that's what I wanted to show you. Let me do it one more time, and then I want to talk a little more about tension. And then we'll be well out of time. Not that we can't stay longer if anyone wants to. I am happy to answer all of your questions. Okay, so here we go. We're going to knit through, knit 2 and then lock on the third one. So again, here's my habit of stretching things out. Here's the third one. I'm going to move the yarn over so it's behind the needles and laying over the red yarn. And then I'm going to just knit and bring it right back. And then when I knit the next stitch, everybody's happy. There we go. You can see it a little, especially if I pull on it. And that's okay. All right. Questions? Anybody?
Allison, would you mind doing the other locking on the white one, even though you wouldn't normally do that right after, just so we could see it right next to what you just did with the red one?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to lock it right here on this third one. Okay. So here's what I would do. I would knit the first. Yeah, that's right. Nope. Yeah. I got the wrong one. I knit the first one, and then I would lock right here. This is the middle one because I'm only going to knit 3 white stitches. So I would bring, again, I always put my needle in first. It's just a habit I have. I'm just going to bring the red yarn forward so that it's over the white yarn. Now, I find it easiest to just pull it forward like this, but you can do kind of the same thing where you're bringing it over the white yarn like this. So that's a little more similar maybe in thought, but it's no different in mechanics or in results, I should say. And so then I would bring it back. I knit the stitch and bring it back to its resting position. And there it's been trapped. And then when I knit the next one, it'll be trapped again. So let me do that again faster. And I'm going to zoom out a little so I don't worry about going out of frame so much. Okay. Okay. So I would knit 1, and then I would bring it forward, knit, and return it to its other position. Just like that. And then let's do the other one again. So now lay it over the yarn behind the needles, knit 1, and then return it. Oh, I got one more to do. There we go. And then let's look. So here is the locked red yarn. It normally sits in the lower position here underneath this white one. and then I brought it higher and then lower. And then here is the white yarn, which normally sits in the higher position, and I brought it lower and then higher. Is that helpful? Cool. All right. Anything else? All right. Let us know. We can do as much as you need. But I did want to talk. I love this. I tell this story every time. Some of you guys have heard it before, I'm sure. But when I was starting Colorwork, first of all, I had a problem with perfectionism. And I was so worried. It was like I thought, oh, I'm only ever going to knit one Colorwork sweater, so it has to be perfect. But of course, I have a wardrobe full of them now. At some point, I realized I needed to think of it more like a journal, like a journey documenting my growth. And so this is my first Colorwork sweater I ever knit. And first of all, it's a low contrast, which makes it extra hard. But let me just see. There are so many. I was knitting so tight on this, like here, you can see how tiny these little stitches are because they're pulled so tight. And what would happen is I'd get to the end of a row and it would be so tight. I would have to like pull through all this extra slack to try and loosen it up. And so there are some places where you can't even see. Oh, like, I mean, normally you can barely even see the stitch. It just like, look at that one. It's hiding in there because it's so tight. I found one on the back too. The back is even worse because I care less about the back because I can't see it. So like, look at this one. There's actually a little white stitch right here, and you can see how tight it is. You can barely see it. But do you know, even with all its imperfections and its low contrast, I love this sweater. I still wear it all the time. And it makes me feel good, right? That this is where I started. And now, now when I do Colorwork, I like, this is Swiss dot all the way up my sleeve that I'm wearing right now. And I've gotten so much better at it, but I still love to see how bad I was when I started. And it's okay. And it doesn't mean I can't wear it. Remember that blocking will help a lot. Like, you can really stretch things out when you block them. So like here is the inside. And you can't tell as much. You can kind of see here, here, how tight some of these are. But that's why the stitches end up so small, is that the length is needed in here because it actually has to traverse all these other stitches. But yeah, so just remember, even if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter. You can still wear it. And if you get to a point, do I have some white yarn somewhere? This is not the right white yarn, but if you get to a point where you have a stitch that's too small like that and you're all done and there's nothing to be done about it because you're not about to frog it. Where'd that one go that was invisible? This is not it, but that one's almost invisible. So if you have one like this that's almost invisible, at the end, you can always cover it up with duplicate stitch if you want. So to do that, you would just bring a yarn through like this, and you're just going to make that little V shape. So I'm bringing it through down here, drawing my needle through the stitch above, and just loosen that up a little, and then draw it right back through here. And where there was no stitch, there magically will be a stitch. Look at that. And it is a great little cheat, especially if something's really bothering you. I mean, I encourage you to let it go. It's a lot healthier. But if you can't let it go, oh, the other thing, I can't show you really because I'm wearing it, but like, I realized on my sweater that I'm wearing, I left a whole stitch out. All the way around on the yoke, there's a stitch missing. And so like, I plan to at some point go through and replace it with duplicate stitch like that. Okay, questions? Anyone? Anything else you need to see? I'm just trying to think. I was going to show you how to join. which I mean, at this point you've already joined. But there are, somewhere I have a little swatch, but I don't see it. I have a mitten here that is in progress. So maybe I'll just stop it. And I apparently am. Oof. All right. Let's get some needles on this guy. Let me just borrow these needles. I'm going to regret this later, but that's okay. I don't have enough yarn to finish this baby hat anyway, unless some sister of mine sends me some.
I can.
All right. So I just wanted to show you a couple ways you can join yarn. That came up because you had to join yarn to get to where the class starts, and I hadn't shown anyone how to do it. So let's say you needed to join a new color right here. Where's the other end of this red? Somewhere it must have another end, right? Or is it an infinite loop? Okay. So if you needed to join some red right here, there are a few ways you can do it. Often for new knitters, we'll tell people just to, I'm going to zoom out a little more. Out is this way. Okay. Often for new knitters, we'll just tell them to like lay it or just let it flop. You don't even have to lay it through. I sometimes lay it through just to get a little more friction on it and then just start knitting with it. So if this were my new yarn and I was going to knit a whole row, you just do that. It's going to be really loose and sloppy right here, but you'll close that up at the end. The other way, and I mean, there are a lot of ways, but the way I like to do it is it's the same as locking your floats essentially. So a few stitches before you need the yarn, which is why I told you to knit to 6 stitches before the end of the row, forgetting that we'd already joined the yarn. You are going to take your new yarn and lay it over the old yarn like so, and then knit. So the first one's always a little tricky. But now you're just going to lock your float back and forth. So now I'm in the lower position, so I can bring it, I'll bring it up, like that, and then bring it down for the next one, and then bring it up, and then bring it down. And so essentially by doing this, you're weaving it in as you go. So you'll have nice tension on it, and then you can just start knitting with it. And this is what it looks like on the back. Let me zoom in on that so you can see it. So you can also do this with a needle. So if you forgot, which I almost always do, I always intend to do it that way, but I forget. So you can take a tapestry needle to join. So say you're at the start of the round and you don't want to go back. You can do the same thing. I'm just going, oops, I'm going through that float in between these 2 stitches, the little leg in between the stitches. You're just going to go up and down. And try not to get it tangled on your needles. It's a little awkward here. And get your tail through. So if this is accomplishing the same thing, it's the same result as what we just did while we were knitting. It's just the forgetful girls method. That's what I should call it. Because I do it a lot because I forget all the time. And so you'll see it's going to look identical, and it does the same thing. So if you forget, or if you're too confused by the up and down locking floats, you can join that way. And again, now you have this nice tension on it. It's super easy to knit with, and you're not going to get that sloppy loose spot. Now I got to figure out where this mitten was. Because this mitten isn't supposed to have red on it. Any other questions? No? Everybody's good? All right. Well, let me Get back here to normal. I'll come back this way. There we go. And switch. Oh, look, there's my spaceship. And here I am. There we go. And I've got the glow from my light box. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. It's been fun. If you have any questions or need any help at all, just let us know. We're here.